reasons why they would want to fire their boss basically remained the same type of reasons, which was really based off really more interpersonal issues than anything else. And
that's interesting.
What was interesting, even equally interesting, was the follow-up question. See, the first question, if you had the opportunity, would you fire your boss? And then the second question was equally eye-opening. What would you be willing to give up for 1 year in order to fire your boss? Well, another 60% said one of these three things: some salary, some vacation time, or some promotion possibility to show their boss to the door. Wow. To me, It was really, really interesting.
Welcome to Management Muse.
Because everybody deserves a better manager.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on Management Muse today. I'm your host, Cindi Baldi, and today my guest is Keith Levick. He has a PhD. He wrote the book Insightful Leadership. He has 30 years of experience working with organizations of all sizes and some really notable companies as well. And he is the CEO of Gorin and Associates, a professional development company in Michigan. And so today, what we're going to talk about is, why it was, well, at least a small piece. We're going to talk about why employees want to fire their bosses. And so that's what we're going to open up with. That's our hook. And we're going to do something that most podcasts don't do. We're not going to bury the lead. So Keith, according to your research, 60% of employees, if given the opportunity, would fire their boss. Can you give us some explanation as to why? Because that's super high.
Yeah, well, it was really interesting when we, more of the backdrop, when we started writing our book, The Insightful Leader, discovering your blind spots through the eyes of employees. And that's the tagline of the book. And, most leadership books, as you probably know, are written from the lens of the author's
their success story.
Or philosophies or whatever. Nothing out there until now, from the lens of the employee and how they think and feel about their bosses. And so when we first started, their survey, the first survey was right around COVID. And at that time, looking at 50 random large, medium, and small companies and about 500 or so responses, 44% said they would fire their boss. Well, then, COVID took place and things happened. We got behind in the book. It didn't go according to our plan.
Never does.
Yeah. So last January, we got together, my co-author, Matt Berman, and I, and said, I wonder how much COVID had to play into this, So what we did, we set up the same survey, sent it out to a new cohort of another 500. So now we'll have a total of 1,000 responses, and it mirrored the pre-COVID or the COVID survey mirrored the more current 2020.
Keith, let me get the timeline right. So the 44% was before or in COVID?
Right at the time of COVID. That was our first survey.
Okay.
This is before we were in the process of writing the book.
And then the second one, I know it was after COVID. Well, after COVID. But can you line it up with where that falls in terms of the Great Resignation?
This was last year.
Okay, so we're clear of the Great Resignation.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so we talked about what we thought would happen. Let's redo the survey, new cohort. How would it change anything from the results from our first survey? And we went back and forth, and we both said, well, you know what? I bet you it's going to be lower than 44% would fire their boss if they had the opportunity. Boy, were we blown away. The new survey, when it came back, at the results, 60% said they would fire their boss. And everywhere else in the survey, it was mirrored, almost identical. It's very interesting. Other than it jumped from 44% to 60% in 3-4 years.
I mean, we won't, I'm assuming you didn't ask this to control for it. But like, I'm thinking about the timeline and the things that have happened. And I wonder if you got the uptick at least partly, because like inflation has hit and yet a lot of salaries haven't changed. And so I would assume that a lot of employees are feeling like that stress and would be upset with their boss, even though their boss only like might have a fraction of control over whether or not they actually get a raise or not. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but it was interesting. Money wasn't shown to be one of the major issues. The reasons why they would want to fire their boss basically remained the same type of reasons, which was really based off really more interpersonal issues than anything else. And
That's interesting.
what was interesting, even equally interesting, was the follow-up question. See, the first question, if you had the opportunity, would you fire your boss? And then the second question was equally eye-opening. What would you be willing to give up for 1 year in order to fire your boss? Well, another 60% said one of these three things: some salary, some vacation time, or some promotion possibility to show their boss to the door. Wow. To me,
Yeah.
it was really, really interesting.
So what do you think is driving that? Because that's, we just went through a crisis, and I know that like we have a sample that's biased by people who would hire us to be inside an organization to try to develop their employees. So like our sample is biased towards organizations that are sort of pro employee.
Mm-hmm.
But what I saw was, organizations really trying to hold on to their employees through a crisis and treating them like much more than just, hey, you're doing this job. And so I'm a little surprised that we're coming out of COVID and the reaction is, I mean, 44% was already big. So
right.
I get that. But, a 16% increase over that's huge.
Big.
Like there are some significant things going on in there.
Yeah, but you know what? It's not that far off from other studies that replicates some of our research. Yeah, things are changed. When you talk about the transition out of COVID, why the Great Resignation, for example? Well, I believe part of the reasons, people got re-engaged with their purpose, their meaning. Tired of driving 2 hours, an hour every day from work, working 12, 15 hours. They enjoyed, being home with family, being home, getting up with the kids, taking the kids to school, what was really important to them. And therefore, we had this great resignation. And so afterwards, here we are today. Well, people are back to work. I got it. But what we're seeing more and more of, in the companies that we work with, that the whole area of issue of psychological safety, of autonomy and flexibility are on the top of the list of what people want in the workplace. Yes, fair salary for sure, but what's more important is that they want to be trained. They want flexibility. They want to have some autonomy, make some decisions. That did not happen. Companies were so focused on the bottom line. Let's get it done. Let's make money, as opposed to being more human-centric, being insightful leaders.
And so what did you test for in terms of explanations for the 60%?
Well, we asked for responses of why they would want to fire their boss. And from that, we came up with the other 14 chapters for the reasons, everything from mistrust, micromanaging, lack of motivation, all the things that I'm sure your company does with like our company, but that hasn't changed. In other words, all the things and areas and issues that psychologists, a great psychologist back in the day talked about, Hertzberg and
Yeah.
Lewin
Yeah.
and Drucker, Adam Grant today and Sinek.
Sure. A degree of autonomy
Yes.
continually comes up as like a way to help drive engagement and reduce burnout and increase satisfaction. And
the things that we psychologists have known and tested, but again, when companies who are still focused only on the bottom line, profit, that's it. Well, I get it. It's a business. Makes sense. But
Sure.
at what expense?
Right. What costs are we not accounting for that is being caused by not addressing these core human needs in work? Because that might be wiping out your profits. Like that, you could be possibly making a whole lot more money if you didn't have those costs.
Yeah,
like we know that with turnover.
Absolutely. I mean, to me, our belief is, hey, if you get the behaviors and the skills right, the profit will come.
Yeah.
And I think we're starting to see this transition. More and more organizations are becoming more focused on these kinds of needs and importance for all the employees. We're seeing it more and more.
I think that these are like you said, like these are principles that have always been there, since like management even became a field of study.
But neglected.
Yes, but it hasn't been long. Like, in the grand scheme of things, we haven't really been studying management specifically very long.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I agree. Like, I think that these are things that leaders need to work on.
I think it goes back to everything we've been known, everything, the kind of training that you provide, that we provide in our company, in helping leaders become insightful to look, if you step back for a moment and you consider how most leaders become leaders, it's probably one of three ways, as you probably know, right? One, they have seniority. You've been here 25 years, you be the leader, right? Or
which means that you've been there for 25 years and aren't already the leader. You probably are lacking some of those skills.
You bet they have, right? Or it could be the good old boys club, right? Who you play golf with. But the number one reason, you know what it is? Most leaders become leaders because they're good doers.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. We see that over and over again.
Over and
technically
over
proficient, technically excellent, rises
100%. Yeah, they have all the technical skills. But here's the deal, as you know. Your technical skills, the person, that engineer, that leader whose technical skills are off the chart, great. But the leadership skills is an entirely different skill set.
They are.
And they're not trained. That's what keeps us busy, right? In doing what we do, training leaders to be, high performing, insightful leaders. That's what we do because they're not trained. And all the people that, that I coach, executive coaching, these are vice presidents, CEOs, directors, it's like I get calls all the time. And it's very similar. They go, you got to coach so-and-so. Yeah, he or she they are great at what they do. Their skill levels are tremendous, but boy, they can't deal with the team. They can't deal with people. See?
Well, and I often think about this is that one of the core differences from being an employee to being a manager, aside from like the technical aspect and the technical skills that are needed, because management has its own skill set. So there's definitely that leap. But like embedded in that is like, when you are an employee, you have a lot of one-on-one relationships. And maybe you have a strong team, maybe you don't. And you could get away with just having a strong one-on-one relationship, especially with like a boss. But once you get into management, you have no choice. It's not about one-on-one relationships. You need to create a group dynamic that's healthy where people can thrive. And that is separate from liking people.
Yep.
And And you have to put in those processes for the whole group to thrive. And it's not built by one-on-one like the manager having 6 reports and having 6 individual relationships. There's an overall relationship of the group. And that is very distinct from what we do in any other lane of our life.
You bet. It's working, how to work together as a team. One of the video clips we use in one of our courses on creating high performing teams is the dream team, the basketball team that the NBA sends to the Olympics every year.
Right.
So in 2004, United States sent to Greece, the best of the best ball players. You're talking about LeBron James and all the greats, right? And they go there.
I know where you're going.
But they didn't win a gold.
Right, because it was a bunch of individuals.
That's right. And to your point, as individual contributors, that's what they are. Individual contributors contributing to hopefully a team or the organization. But when you're placed in a position, of working together as a team, don't confuse, as you know, a group of people, and in this case, a group of great basketball players with being a team. And so what they did, the follow up on that, it just changed the entire dynamic of understanding the basketball, the NBA players and the greatness, but doesn't make them a team. So what they did in the following years, they brought in a new coach, Coach K from Duke, and they brought in Kobe Bryant, who was a floor leader. And that changed the entire team dynamic. And it changed. And they called it the Redeem Team. And from that point on, they haven't lost, So it's to your very point, not to confuse a group of people with being a high-performing team in any way, shape, or form. You can have the greatest ball players, the greatest engineers, the greatest technician, but if you're not working together,
right, we're not getting that. I almost shiver saying this word. We were not getting that synergy. Like that was like the word when I was getting an MBA.
Yeah, wasn't it? And it's still important. That's what synergy is.
It is. It is. It's greater than the parts.
That's right.
And in the case of the dream team initially, and I'm going back, but I think Moneyball was also kind of related to this.
Yeah.
You can actually have the sum of the parts be less than actually just being neutral. They were actually working against each other, causing worse performance all the way around.
Yeah. When you start looking only about themselves, at the cost of the team, Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think that's good insight. I'm going to shift you a little bit.
Sure.
And talk for at least for a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit more focused about emotional intelligence because you cover a lot of things in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And I zoned in on the emotional intelligence component because we haven't really spent a lot of time it comes up periodically, obviously, because it's emotional intelligence. And it is like one of the 3 core things that, virtually every leadership study ever has found as what distinguishes somebody from being a leader or not. And so I want to shift you a little bit to getting some of your insights about emotional intelligence. And so we probably should start with just really just quickly explaining what emotional intelligence is. Would you mind doing that?
Oh, no, absolutely. It's without doubt the number one skill set for a highly effective, insightful leader, without doubt. We expanded the term emotional intelligence to include Daniel Goleman's work on social intelligence. So we focus on social/emotional intelligence.
What's the difference between the two?
Well, the original emotional intelligence, talked about the internal self-awareness, being aware, and then emotional regulation, managing your emotions, which is all very important. But then there's the social intelligence side. And this is being aware of other people's social awareness. Like I'm standing in line at a grocery store and you're in front of me with 50 groceries and I'm behind you with one. Are you aware of me? Can I go before you lay down all your groceries? That's social awareness or the lack of. And then there's the social skills that are necessary. Things like empathy, perspective taking, and skill, being organizationally savvy. So our model that we work from, we created our own model. So the first half of the day is on EI, emotional intelligence, and the second half of the day is social intelligence. So social emotional intelligence, which basically is being aware of your own feelings. Being aware and once you're aware of your feelings, managing your emotions, right? Emotional regulation. Right. And then social awareness. It's being aware of other people's needs and who they are and what they need and attending to them. Being aware of body language,
right.
Nonverbal communication. And then to, connect empathically by perspective taking and things like that. To me, that's so those are the elements of a socially emotional intelligent individual.
I guess I had not heard the label social intelligence, but like how I describe emotional intelligence is managing yourself and like the self-regulation and managing others and their emotions to try to, people have emotions, but to try to keep things within a relatively stable.
All we did was tag social intelligence to the second part.
Right.
How you do it for others. You have to be socially aware of their emotional state in order to help them manage and deal with it. So yes, it's all the same concept and it's critical. And this is, if you would ask me, Keith, if there's one skill set that makes a highly insightful leader from the work you have done, without doubt, it is to strengthen a person's social and emotional intelligence. And all the research is, as you know, it's off the rafters. A socially emotional intelligent leader makes $29,000 more annually than a person with low social emotional intelligence, for example. I mean,
that's pretty good. I hadn't heard that stuff.
Oh yeah, to get into Harvard's business school, the competencies they look for are all in the area of social emotional intelligence. And what it was about 10 years ago to get into medical school, they finally, about 10 years ago, put in.
Oh, good. They needed to do that.
An interpersonal piece in there and training. So, I mean, I'm reminded of a surgeon who I coached who came to me from a hospital who, in the OR, ripped the phone out of the wall in frustration and threw it across the room at the nurse. How would you like to be the patient on that gurney? Not me.
No, definitely not. There's definitely been, there are many wonderful people in healthcare, but you do get some of those standouts where especially when HCAPS came out, you really saw how some of the older generation of doctors, they're just like, I'm doing my job. I'm excellent at my job. Well,
good technician.
Some of doing your job is actually making a patient feel like they're in good hands. And I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one who's been to a doctor and had them lecture me. And I'm like, yeah, I think I'm not taking you seriously anymore. You kind of don't have a right.
Where I get their attention when I coached, or for years I did in a local hospital, the behavioral medicine lectures for years. And they're sitting like nice students and taking it all in. And until I show them that physicians with higher social emotional intelligence are sued less malpractice.
Not surprised.
Compared to all right, next, treat you as transactional interaction and, like you're a number. Where you at?
Well, and the other thing that I've noticed, this is just anecdotal, um, but with talking to the people throughout my life with doctors, whether they think their doctor is good, like there's such an asymmetry of information and the body is so complex that a patient can't really tell if their doctor's all that good. And so how they judge them is, do I like them?
That's right. And by the way, research shows that female physicians are liked a little bit more than the male physician, because female physician is shown to create a little more rapport, more interpersonal kind of interaction compared to males. But you said something earlier that links to, I think, part of the theory behind what we're talking about right now, and that is, look. To get into medical school and go through medical school and even law school, there's some similarities between the two, but to go through and to study, to make it to the top of your class, to be sure you get through medical school is all an individual journey, being the best of the best, do what you can do, beat somebody else, be at the top of the class. Everything is so individual, and they get through. And so individually, they're great at what they have accomplished. Get through medical school, law school, yes.
They know their stuff. Oh, yeah. For sure.
But what happens? They're then thrown into a team. And that's where that individual contributor, mentality that we talked about earlier. And I think that's a challenge for many physicians and lawyers, making that transition from a highly individual state of mind and thinking that got them through school, now thrown into working together as a team, So this is where I've coached many physicians and lawyers in helping make that transition, because it's so individualized. So just because you're great at what you do, as we said earlier, doesn't make you a good, high-performing team leader.
Well, and I think too, there's a tendency, I think, to become over-reliant on just being the smartest person or one of the smartest people, and neglecting the social elements, because that's worked. It works for a very long time.
Not only it works for a biological reason. See, what you're bringing out, which is awesome, is our neuroscience. There's different parts of the brain.
Right.
And I like to think in terms of what Kahneman talked about, system 1 thinking and system 2 thinking. System 1 part of the brain is the emotional part of our brain, the primitive part of our brain. All right. And then, there's the other different parts, but the logical part, what we call system 2. So if we just stay there for a moment. Okay, those are the two major systems at work. So you are right. So we come out of school, and with a full of system 2, all this logic, rational logic, academic thinking. Yeah, very important. And this for years. We studied the brain going back to not me, but back in the 20s and 30s, we thought that what made people smart and successful must be the size of their brain.
They spent a lot of time measuring brains.
Remember that? Well, that didn't pan out.
Just as a little side note,
yeah.
My husband and everybody in his family, they have gigantic heads. Face on, they look normal, but long wise, they're really, and we were just having this conversation with one of his cousins, and they are very smart. But I looked at the other wife whose brain is more normal sized, and she's also very smart. And I said, well, we're just more efficient.
Yeah. So, it's so that we studied the brain, and the brain was studied, and then all this, all the different tests trying to figure out what we have found. And this is where the whole area of emotional intelligence began. It's two sides of the brain working together that makes us smarter, better decision makers, more innovative and creative when two sides are working together. And what we have found that the system 1 part of our brain, our emotional brain, works 80,000 times faster than our logical brain, the system 2. And so that's why, for example, you ever meet somebody You ever meet somebody and immediately you like them or you dislike them?
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with the logical part of your brain.
No, you're picking up on.
Oh, yeah. We pick up, and this is what the neuroscience has taught us more and more. This is the basis of connection or disconnection, because our system two thinking, the logical brain, is very lazy. Very lazy, and takes a lot of mental energy to dig deep. So what it does when we're faced with a problem, it goes to what it already knows. We've done it this way, so let's continue to do it this way, which is a problem or can be a problem. So to your very point, in the different parts of the brain, it's when the system one and system two work together, makes us smarter, wiser, better decision makers. And yes, we want to listen to our system one because that works so much quicker and it's great. It leads to connections and trust and everything else. However, there's the downside. It can lead to isms, all the different racism, section, because we make judgments. We're visual.
It's a category system. I mean, like that's the lazy part of the brain is the heuristics.
Yes.
And so, right. That means that we're falling into stereotypes pretty much immediately.
And that comes from system one thinking. So we have to be aware of it. But there's other parts that are really, and just as we know the system two is lazy, but at best, as human beings, it's when we work together, our social and emotional intelligence. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. So what would be your advice to managers? And let's take it first from managing themselves. What would be like your advice in improving their emotional intelligence?
The social emotional intelligence. It's walking away from, it's becoming aware. You and I found, and maybe you too, there's some people who are very in touch with their own thoughts and their feelings. For example, I know the day before I get sick, there's something going on in my body.
Me too.
And then there's other people who go, what are you talking about? They're not. And it's not a judgment. It's just there's a more an awareness. And so to me, I help leaders become more aware, become self-aware. When you have a meeting and you start to feel your gut or you feel something going on inside of you, be aware of that. That's a signal. Our emotions, signal us to danger and different things. Become aware of that.
I just want to step in because what you're saying is actually really important, but it's so easy to say, right? Like, become aware, but so much of our life is, and some people are better at it than others, like shutting off that awareness, like not listening to it, not recognizing it.
And yet it does exist. And just because you shut it off, I mean, it's going to take effect of your body. We call it psychosomatic issues and illnesses. There's a reason why there's, people grind their teeth at night, get headaches, have stomach issues and irritable bowel syndrome and all the other stress-related conditions. You can block your brain and you can't pretend it's not happening, but it is. It's the self-awareness to become more aware of those signals. Then emotional regulation. We teach a technique in what we call reframing your stinking thinking.
Yes.
And helping people understand that we experience a situation in life, which then creates a thought, which then creates a feeling, and then your behavior. For example, I tell you a joke, that's a situation. You think the joke is funny, you feel happy, you begin to laugh, right? But if you want to change the behavior, or if you want to change the feeling, because right now you're stressed out, you're angry, frustrated day in and day out because of work. What creates that? It's the way you think. And so if you can change the way you think, we call it reframing your thinking, your feelings and behavior will change. So it's teaching them the reframing technique to manage their emotional state. And you know what it is? We all reframe. Many people just know it's called reframing. For example, a loved one, has a chronic illness and then they pass away. You go to the funeral, and I always use my hands when I talk about reframing. People remember this. What are the typical reframes you hear at the funeral upon their person with a chronic illness who passes? What do people say? Things like, they're not suffering anymore. It's a reframe. They're in God's hands. That's a reframe. It's not a right or wrong. It's not a good or bad. It's just looking at the situation.
Looking at it as more positive. The passing is more positive.
Not positive. It's looking at it differently. It could be positive, but it's just looking at it differently to help you better deal with the situation that you're experiencing. We call that reframing. See? Powerful technique. Of all my years as a clinician and helping people, and the research is up there.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like, you really do have to. It is a skill. I call it mental management.
Yeah. Okay.
And it is, these are skills that you really do have to practice, maybe initially, but once you do them enough, pretty much starts to come automatically.
But yeah, it's our ability to reframe our stinking thinking, that because we're all going to be punched in the nose of work hassles and problems, health problems, relationship problems, money problems. I mean, come on, to live life with an experience, but it's your ability to reframe your stinking thinking that's critical. Now, getting set the other side, staying in your model, okay, is now the social awareness, right? And what we're talking about now is really being aware of other people. And to me, what we focus on, the skill set here, is really better understanding body language and nonverbal communication, where not only of your own body language, but other people and the tone of voice. I'm not angry. Really? Your voice is one thing, your body language says another. So it's understanding body language and enhancing your social intelligence. And then the last piece of the model, and managing others, as you call it, would be, strengthening your empathy skills, via taking other people's perspective taking. And there's so many others.
Let's talk about that for a minute, because we have a number. There's a type of person who makes it to management, again, always technically proficient, who wants to draw that line where they just want the people to do the work and they don't want to have to attend to any of their emotions.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that the reason they do this is because they actually have poor skills in being able to have empathy while also managing their emotions. And it's a defensive move that they're making. If they don't get close, then they won't succumb to feeling bad and then being suckered. I really think that many times they feel like they're going to get suckered.
Yeah, it is a defense mechanism for sure. Oftentimes, we call it in our book, our blind spots. We all have blind spots. To your point, look, understand the way we human beings are born to be empathic. We all have the propensity to demonstrate empathy. Doesn't mean we all do. And very much probably is how you're raised. If you're raised in a home where a lot of empathy is demonstrated, yes, there's a higher likelihood you'll be more empathic. On the other hand, if you're, in a very cold transactional environment, maybe the less empathy. But we all have the propensity. And so we can strengthen one's empathy and their skill. But if there's a blind spot or they're conditioned not to be empathic, then you got leaders out there who, just get it done. And it's amazing. That comes out so loud in our book as one of the top issues. my boss is a cold-hearted jerk, blah, blah, blah. And the stories that we have heard, the stories I'm sure you've heard from leaders who are you kidding? This person is sick and this and that. And oh, well, you got to be here on time. It's like the lack of empathy is just amazing. And, and I'll expand it to our world right now. And I don't know if you can disagree or not, but I think that's what our world needs more of right now. There's a whole lot more of empathy and compassion for one another instead of divisive, you're wrong, and our binary thinking. And yeah.
If there was one suggestion that you would like to make to share with leaders on how to improve their leadership skills, what would it be?
Well, to me, we talked about it earlier. Strengthen your social and emotional intelligence. Understand, pick up some, there's many books. There's so many books. Read Daniel Goleman's book on social emotional intelligence. Begin to read. Pick up my book, to read these things and understand. You can strengthen your empathy skills, your, understanding and your self-awareness skills and your, social awareness skills, etc. That we know, as you said earlier, the research is up to the rafters on the importance of it. So that would be without doubt, because in that, you're talking about building trust and building rapport, understanding individuals, your own self well-being, and all the elements that come with the person with a strong social emotional intelligence, which makes an insightful leader.
Any other parting words?
Yeah, please. If you do want to read more on our book, it's called The Insightful Leader, Discovering Your Blind Spot Through Employees' Eyes. It's an easy read. It's not a lot of heavy, theoretical foundation, but from the research and from the eyes of the employees about what people want, what they want from their bosses.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Keith. This was a wonderful conversation.
Oh, yeah, we had a great conversation. I love it. I can go on and on and on. Because you know what? I always like people who think like me.
I know. Don't we all? But yeah, we definitely have a lot of similarities.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Don't forget to grab your copy of the Uncertainty Playbook. And if you'd like to stay connected, sign up for our newsletter. The link is in the show notes. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on Management Muse. We are a podcast/YouTube channel that we hope is entertaining and educational. If you are on YouTube, we would appreciate you subscribing and maybe leaving a comment and a like. If you are on any of the podcasts listening to this, we would appreciate stars, following, comments, all the good stuff. We want to say thank you to Sarah and Rebecca. And then just as a last minute reminder, we also want to mention that we are management and communication professionals working in the field, but also have degrees that back us in science. All that being said, we are talking in generalities on this podcast. We do not actually know your particular situation. So proceed with common sense and maybe a little bit of experimentation on your end. And we hope that you make the world a more beautiful place by making work a more enjoyable place. See you next time on Management Muse.